What's up, YouTube? This is Too Raw for TV. All right, so before I get into this video, I got to shout out a subscriber. You know the name, you've probably heard it quite a few times. Shout out to Brother Aram with a donation to the channel via the PayPal. He leaves a note. He says, in their prime, who's the greatest all-around center? I have Kareem ahead of Walton. I have Wilt as the GOAT. But if Walton never got hurt and never had an injury-plagued career, how do we rate him as an all-time player? What a shame he was hurt. Thank you, Mike, and blessings to you and your family. Thank you for that greeting at the end, man. We might get blasted by a snowstorm in a couple of days. Been keeping tabs of that. Got to see what happens with that. But anyway, this is the thing. Like, I think everybody knows that I feel like Wilt Chamberlain is the greatest center of all time. I know a lot of people nowadays have him much lower. They hold the finals record against him, but yet they don't hold that against LeBron Ramon James. Even though LeBron Ramon James had the benefit of playing with I don't know how many great players. You know what I'm saying? And the benefit of free agency, which Wilt did not have the benefit of. He was at the mercy of the owners as far as whether he could be traded. So I think Wilt Chamberlain is the greatest when I look at his dominance, when I look at his longevity, the way he was able to, this I think something he doesn't get credit for, the way he was able to adapt to different coaches, adapt to different playing styles, as far as the teams he were on, the way he was able to adapt his game to what was betterment for the team, and the fact that they changed the rules to try to slow him down, both in college and in the NBA. He was a lot more skilled than people give him credit for. People forget this guy played with the Harlem Globetrotters in 1958 because the rules at the time didn't allow players who left college early to go into the draft. There had to be a 4-year period between the time you get to college and the time you declare for the NBA draft. So he played for the Harlem Globetrotters, toured with them over, I think, overseas, around the world. He was a very skilled player. But, you know, the skills that he acquired, he couldn't display them in the NBA game at that time because it was a center position game. A position game where he had to play the standard center game. But anyway, if you're talking about who I think was the best center in their prime, man, you can make a strong argument for Hakeem Olajuwon. And that is because I understand Wilt's Achilles heel, which was the free throw shooting. Early on in his career, he was around 60%. As he got older and stronger and bigger, he got worse, as was the case with Shaq. As we've seen the same thing with Giannis. When you get stronger, it messes with your release, your mechanics. Also, if you have large hands, you can't get quite a good grip of the ball. That's why some of the strongest players in the history of the game are terrible free throw shooters. It's not necessarily that their mechanics are a problem. It's more of a feel for the ball and their strength. That's why I think Giannis may benefit from shooting a little bit further back from where he shoots free throws. But anyway, I digress. Hakeem Olajuwon, in his prime, really did not have any weaknesses. I think the weakest part of his game, I would say, and those of us who observed him, if you want to call it a weakness, was his passing, which did get better to the point where he was never a great facilitator, but his passing decision making got infinitely better. But still, it was still probably the weakest part of his game. And that's one of the reasons why the Sonics, who were known for trapping and had great overall team defense, that's why they had a lot of success against the Sonics. I mean, excuse me, the Sonics had a lot of success against the Rockets, part of it at least. But other than that, his passing had improved to the point where he was an average passer toward the peak years of his career. But everything else about his game for the times were remarkable. He was a tremendous rebounder. I think he led the league in rebounding, was it twice, I believe? He led the league in blocks a couple times. He was a tremendous shot blocker, good rim protector. In my opinion, the greatest post scorer the game has ever seen. Him and Kevin McHale. Kevin McHale might be the best. Kevin McHale might be the best low post scorer. Olajuwon's the best post scorer because he could do it in the high and low post. Plethora of moves. He had dribble abilities and ball handling abilities that we didn't really see at that time in the center position. He could handle the ball handle the rock like a guard. He displayed it brilliantly. He worked like crazy on his game. He was not a raw type leader, but he led by example. His religion changed him as a person. Earlier on, when he was Hakeem Olajuwon, he was fiery. If you look at some old footage of him when he used to get into fights with players, when he was Hakeem, before he really committed himself to Islam and worked on his temper, he was fiery. He'll rock with. He'll you know what I'm saying? He went to blows with people. But, he was more of a leader by example. He was a tremendous pressure and playoff performer. He had range out to about 18, 19 feet occasionally. Once in a while will knock down a three, which leads me to believe that if he was playing today, he would be a pretty good three-point shooter. He was a decent free throw shooter, 70%. He didn't, had the mid-range jumper. I don't think his mid-range was as good as David Robinson's, but it was good. It was good. You know what I'm saying? David Robinson, when he got, at that free throw line jump he had, when he was on, it was automatic. Hakeem's was really good, though. I think Hakeem range was a little bit, this is how I always looked at it. David Robinson was better overall mid-range, but I thought Hakeem had more range, generally speaking. That's just, maybe people have the same observation on that. That's how I always looked at it. And also, Hakeem Olajuwon, and I don't know how this changed all of a sudden, because that's how I know we've become a ring counting culture, because I know some people disagree with me on this, but I know now some people put Shaq ahead of Hakeem, but that wasn't the case when they were playing. When they were playing, when Hakeem retired, now granted, when Hakeem retired in 2002, it was 3-2 in Shaq's favor. Later on, Shaq won another one. But the general consensus was that Hakeem was the better player. If you ask Shaq himself, he'll tell you he thought Hakeem was better. Hakeem was the better of the great centers at that time. Whether you're talking about Shaq, whether you're talking about David Robinson, whether you're talking about Patrick Ewing. Earlier on in his career, Moses Malone, of course, was still a force to be reckoned with. You had Jack Sikma, Artis Gilmore. I'm talking about earlier on in Hakeem Olajuwon's career. Later on, you had the other tier of centers, Rick Smits, Alonzo Mourning, Dikembe Mutombo. He was better than those guys and consistently outplayed them. And he won championships without really necessarily having a great team around him. I mean, he had Clyde Drexler, but Clyde was past his prime. This was Clyde after the knee injury, I think it was. And then the first year, I think the second best player on the team was Otis Thorpe when he won the title. So to me, I think there's a strong argument for Hakeem Olajuwon. Now, back to the question about Bill Walton. If Bill Walton never got hurt, I'll put it like this. I think there's a strong chance in 77, 78 that the Portland Trailblazers would have repeated as champions. That year they finished 58-24, and I think they let me double check this. I know in 1977, 76, 77, Portland was 49-33, I believe. 77, 78, they were 58-24. But that's misleading because they finished the season 8-14 after Bill Walton got hurt. They lost in the semifinals to the Seattle Supersonics, who that year ultimately went to the NBA Finals. I'm certain that if Bill Walton hadn't got hurt, they would have beaten them. And so I'm trying to go off memory here. But I think Portland used to own the Sonics before Bill Walton got hurt. I might be wrong in that. Let me check something out here. Let me go to the regular season. So right off the bat, they beat the Sonics opening night 106-99. They played them again November 5th, 1977. They beat them again 116-94. Wasn't even close. They didn't play again until let's see. When did they play again? At that point, I think Walton was hurt. But they didn't play again until March 21st, 1978. Walton was hurt by then. But they still beat them 102-96. But they lost the last game 101-86. April 2nd, 1978. Yeah, so look, Bill Walton, I think if he didn't get hurt, because in real life they lost to the Sonics 4-2 without Bill Walton. I think with Bill Walton, they would have beaten the Sonics 4-0 or 4-1. And they probably would have repeated. Because at the time that Bill Walton got hurt, the Blazers were 50-10. They were on pace to probably win something like 67, 68 games, one of the all-time great teams. That's why Bill Walton won an MVP award, even though he only participated in 58 games. Because a lot of times people look at that and they don't know the context of that season. So I think if Bill Walton didn't get hurt and he had like the health of a Kareem, I think he probably would be looked upon. And let's be honest, he would have the benefit of. I mean, come on, we know what the deal is. He'll have some benefit because of what he looks like. Okay, I'm just honest. It's going to help him out a little bit. But aside from that, I think he'd probably be looked upon as a top 3, at least top 4 all-time center if he never got hurt. Because I think he would be in the conversation. I think he would belong. I think he would be in a conversation with Wilt, Kareem. Who else? Who else is up there? Hakeem. I mean, Russell doesn't have the skill set these guys have. He has certain intangibles that you can't always measure through the stat sheet. But as far as skills, honestly, Bill Walton be right there. I mean, Bill Walton was one of the great passing big men of all time. He was a great post scorer, although he wasn't selfish. He was a shot blocker. He was a rim protector. He was a great defensive player. He was a great offensive rebounder, as well as a great rebounder. He didn't really have any weaknesses. Now, by today's standards, he wasn't a great outside shooter, but that wasn't a prerequisite of centers back then. But I'm pretty sure Big Red would have worked on it if he was playing today. I think from a skills perspective, Bill Walton, who's arguably a top two college player of all time, Bill Walton, if he hadn't get hurt, I think he would be top 10 all time player probably. And I don't think that's hyperbole. If you actually watch how Bill Walton played, it's a reason why he was revered the way that he was, because he was great. Unfortunately, he wasn't able to put together a career because of terrible injuries. You know, and even when he did play toward the latter part of his career, he was always still in pain. This is a man that had, if I remember the number correctly, Bill Walton had 136 surgeries in his lifetime. 136 surgeries. Think about that for a second. 136 surgeries over his lifetime. Most of that during his playing career. And then afterward, having to deal with the back issues he had and other issues, the bones in his feet. 136 surgeries over a span of probably, 50 years? But anyway, that's how I look at that, ladies and gentlemen. Tell me what you guys think.